What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your girl, Rebel Ray, and I'm in the building, coming live to you at the Digital Nest. Listen, now, for all y'all individuals that have a hard time seeing, when you lose your glasses or you run out of your contacts, it makes a world of difference. You gotta keep insurance to help us, Lord, I swear. You gotta keep insurance. It's one of them things that you gotta have some glasses when you need them. I'm getting older, y'all, and I love getting older. I always make fun of getting older. I'm actually excited about it. But I can't see right now. And I absolutely look like my father when I go to squinting somewhere. So, but anyway, blessings to all of you. I'm so happy to be here, to be in support um, of this position, to have this podcast and connect with you. I love each and every one of you. And I tell you that every day if I could, but also every week. It's important for you to know that you're loved, you're appreciated, and you're heard. So today we're going to be talking about the importance of mentorship. Shout out to all of my masters out there. When I say my masters, they are not ruling over me. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I have learned to adopt individuals that I know are striving for higher consciousness, a higher way on how they present themselves in the community, a higher way on how they show up for their family members, and it's growth mindset when it comes to financial growth and learning how to remove some of the stigma of poverty and not having a growth mindset. Ashe. We always clapping it up when there's some gems being dropped on the podcast, including myself. As you can see, I always got a good, sexy setup going. You know what I'm saying? I got my incense burning, I got my candles lit, and I always got a book or two to share, usually before we have our guests come on. And, drop a comment in the chat. Heart it up when you hear something that resonates with you, because I like to know what you want to hear. I like to know, I like that feedback, and I'm okay with the criticism as well. I think that's how we improve, and understanding too, as the self, how important it is to be able to connect with people, to be able to reassure people, and then reassure yourself as well. A good person and someone that is following in higher consciousness always takes the time to elaborate on the growth, share gems, because I really believe in getting to a place where I can be right with my creator, being right with my inner self, and being right with my higher self, right? There's no low vibrations for rebel. It's important. So I'm drinking my tea today. Mm. We got some announcements, and I always shout out to Joel Juarez. He always takes care of me and makes sure that I am here and I'm loved here when I come into this space. This space is at the Digital Nest here at United Way of San Joaquin, which we encourage other nonprofits, other leaders, and other individuals to come utilize the space and utilize it for your podcast needs. And everybody doesn't have to go live, because some people are not good live. Some people are good with, maybe recording and editing and putting their podcast out there. But this is my way on how I connect with the people and how we lift a voice for the people. I got a couple of announcements before I bring my individuals that are waiting backstage. I always, always get somebody new. Sometimes it's really planned out and thoughtful. And sometimes I just drop the link to individuals that I know may resonate with the gems that we need dropping. And so I get my handy dandy cell phone here. It's not a notebook. It's so funny because as I get older, my comedy is dry. As I don't know what it's not as funny as I think it is. But it's so wonderful to be with you and to let you know what's going on in the community. So first of all, as executive director of Reinvent South Stockton Coalition, I use every platform to plug our work. I believe in our work. I started nonprofit work very young, as a young child in the church. A church kid probably knows every fundamental thing. If they're really involved in the church, they know every fundamental thing to run a nonprofit. If you really paid attention on how to do business and support the business. And my family members were generations of entrepreneurs. Even my great grandmothers, they own property down south in Detroit, Michigan. Shout out Detroit, Michigan, won the playoffs. Those Lions won the playoffs this year. It took them 32 years. 32 years to win a playoff championship. Shout out to my cousin Neil. He is a diehard everything Detroit, Detroit Knicks, Detroit Pistons. I'm sorry, Detroit Pistons and the Detroit Lions. And so they are off to the playoffs. They won those championships. So shout out to them. But just remembering growing up too, grandmama always had extra land, and they lived around the stadium, and they had a way where they would park cars, and she would use her land also to rent for other people who needed block parties. So it was always the ability to make money if you had that mindset, having that growth financial mindset, always support an entrepreneurship mind, right? And what can you build with that? That's important. So anyway, going into our first announcement, we have the Stockton Candidate Forums 2024 of Reinvent South Stockton Coalition. It'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. January 29th, 2024, and February 19th, 2024. We're going to have a series of two forums that are very important to the people to be able to hear who you're going to be voting for potentially and how they're running, and the importance of why to make a most trauma-informed vote this year. It is a very serious vote this year, not only for the city of Stockton, for the county, for the state, and also for the federal government that's coming up. It's an important election. And so January 29th, 2024 will be at the Courthouse Plaza in the Yosemite Room. A lot of you don't know, but Parents by Choice runs a beautiful arcade down there, and they have a lovely event venue that really supports the community. And that's at 306 East Main Street, downtown Stockton. Just know parking is available on the street. You could pay for parking in the parking lot of the venue, or you can walk there or take the bus. And so this is really geared towards our community members and our residents to come and hear who are your District 6 candidates, and I think we have 6, and your mayoral candidates will be there. Your Stockton Council, your county supervisor districts 1, 3, and 5 will be there, and 2 Superior Court judges running for the office 3. So it's important to have your questions. The flyer I will go ahead and post on the Prune Tree podcast, so you'll be able to scan that flyer and submit your questioning, right? And so if you want to hear your questioning, or you feel like there's important matters of the heart to be, heard at that candidate forum, make sure you're there. Make sure you're in attendance, because we're going to be reading off everyone's questions. And so I just want to read this. Our next election is coming soon. The last day to vote will be March 5th, which is the first primaries. Make sure you're registered to vote. Join us for 2 public forums to learn more about all of the candidates who are running for the local government positions important to improving your lives and your community. January 29th forum will include questions about general topics like transportation, parks, jobs, while the February 19th forum will really focus on affordable housing and our unsheltered community members and the solutions around what we are trying to do here in Stockton and Greater San Joaquin for that. So please register and make sure you submit your questions. Everyone's voice is important, right? So we're going to use the QR code and then also follow us at Reinvent South Stockton Coalition at Reinvent South Stockton on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And we're actually on LinkedIn as well. So I try to put all of those announcements out and make sure that everyone has that. Now I'm monitoring my questions and my comments on the board as well. Some of you are maybe looking at me, and some of you are maybe listening in. So I'm gonna do my best to check all of the comments and support. And I know Joel is going to also drop that StreamYard link inside of the chat on Facebook Live just to support those individuals who would like to join me live. This is what we do. And we're not afraid of it, right? So I'm going to be exiting this screen and seeing who's back here. So I see that we have someone. Look at that. It's Aaron T. What's good? I'm about to have him join in. And then I see someone else. They're trying to join in. You may have to drop back out and join in, but I do see you. And I also see Joel. So I'm going to bring everyone on. And I also see Tony, I believe. So Tony's trying to join in. Is saying that the link is not allowing you to join in. So here we go. Let's talk about the ability to have effective mentorship and what that means. Hello, hello. What's up, Aaron? Drop who you are and let people know what time it is.
What's going on, RC? I appreciate you, Miss Rebel. I sincerely do for sending me the link the way you did. I was not expecting to get a link to a Zoom or a podcast tonight. I thought I had done all my Zoom calls already for the evening. But I appreciate it, especially with the subject matter. As some people know, I am a youth advocate. More specifically, I work for the Amelia Ann Adams Whole Life Center as the youth healing specialist. And within that role, I get to do a number of things, and mentorship is just one of them. If you know, you know, but I've been doing mentorship for young men within the city of Stockton for the last 5 years, give or take.
For sure.
I ain't quite counting, but yeah, it's been a little minute. And to start, I'm gonna say this: without good mentors, our world will be a lot different than what it currently looks like. And honestly, I do not want to see what that would look like.
Yeah, Ashe, Ashe. So tell us, when you look at finding a mentorship too for yourself, because we always talking about the improving the self, and um, that's what we talk about, here on the podcast, right? And this podcast is, a little bit for everybody, but it also talks about like, improving the self. When you go to find a master of his class, what do you look for, right? What do you look for to support how you should show up in a community? Who could teach you? And what are the important traits that you look for? Oh, and I think I lost him, and that's okay. So we'll get back to him. I have here that's in the chat. Joel. Joel, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Joel. Thank
Hi there.
you. Appreciate you for coming in. We had just lost Aaron, but I know he'll probably try to join a little later. But I see he's jumping back in. Okay. So I know Aaron was starting back. I have to let him back in.
No, of
Um,
course.
I like to have this ongoing conversation and support that. Just one moment. Okay, so Aaron, you're back in. Hi.
Yes, I'm back. My bad. I caught a call as we were talking. Had to ignore it real quick. But yeah, I think I forget where I was at, but I've
So
been
you
doing
talk about the importance of having mentors and the importance of like why our young men need them. So you could expound on that because I think that's important. I think it's important to really talk about what's missing right now for some of our young men and how we show up as those mentors.
yes. I think we are coming into a part of our generations space, at least for my generation. Like I remember, I know I'll say this. I grew up through the '90s, early and through the 2000s. I was born in '93, and one thing that I noticed that we didn't have a lot of men to look up to growing up. And the ones we did have, our moms kind of knew them for whatever reason. It might be uncles, it might be close relatives or whatever, but we didn't have a lot of male figures to just look up to, right? A lot of those that we saw on TV would be your flashy TV drug dealers. So they was really just actors playing drug dealers. Um, then you got your athletes, and then from there you got your rappers who might have come out the life and who might not, might have been putting on the facade. But right, the things that they gave us as young men that we didn't then we really didn't have no understanding or no point to really be to subscribe to. Um, we took on. And I think that the current generations that are coming behind me are still feeling the results of that, right? Are still feeling the outlook on that because many of our young men, if you go and ask them, they tell you, I want to be a ball player, I want to be a rapper. You don't hear a lot of them saying, oh, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to go learn a trade. I think, I think welding is cool. Like you don't hear that no more. Um, but like the solid generation before me, we had those type of men who was going to work in the factory and bringing home that check and taking care of the home. You know what I mean? And I think something happened between the '70s and '80s. And I don't want to harp on old things, but you got the crack epidemic and all types of things going on within that time period. And it took us out. It took the men out. It took the brothers out who was saying, "Go get a real job.
Now, I
Let's
want
stop
you to
daydreaming."
I think you're sharing a valid point and you're sharing a specific perception. And I want you, as a teacher, now that you are growing older and you're maturing, to really expound on the perception you're sharing. So it may not be everybody's perceived thought that chimes into the podcast. What perception are you sharing right now? Are you sharing the Black men's experience?
Yes, straight
Mhm.
up. I can't speak for nobody else's experience, so
Mhm.
that's exactly who I'm sharing.
Mhm.
Um, I think the experience through the time period that I'm talking about it might be very different for other nationalities, ethnic groups, etc. Because some of the things that we experienced as Black men did not happen in that way in those communities. So yes, I am very much so speaking as a Black man in this world.
So
I
let's-
shout out my uncles
Mhm.
because they were men who said, "Yeah, I have my issues, but they made sure they did what they showed me what a man was,
Mhm.
in their own rights." But I know for like my homies, they didn't have those male figures. They didn't have those people, and they didn't have those people. And the ones who did pour them into the community was the D boys. I grew up in Houston, so I'm gonna say instead of saying drug dealer, I'm gonna say D boy because that's what I grew up with,
Mhm.
right? We had D boys in the neighborhood who would pull up and say, "Hey, little bro, go wash my car. I
Mhm.
got you. Hey,
Mhm.
little bro, go do this for my mama. I got you." And as they got older, the favors became different, and then they end up falling into the same cycles because that's what it was.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that the current generation of young men, specifically Black boys, Black and brown boys, because that's who I worked with specifically over these last few years, I think they're coming to a point to where all the glitz and the glam that we put in front of them is super real because it's in front of them, not just in the neighborhood when you walking down the street, but it's on their phone via social media, etc. And the avenue to get that, or the avenues to go and get those riches, those dreams and stuff like that that they're seeing and getting thrown in front of them over and over again, while they may seem vast, are very small, and it doesn't allow them to say, "Hey, man, I can go get a regular job,"
So what I
right?
felt is you
In
have
that in
there's
that sense.
truth in that, right? There's a lot of truth in that. I want to have Joelle jump in here because
Yes, please.
Latino X. Um, you may have a similar experience and then you may not. You know what I mean? You might have had parents that said, Joel, you're going to school. You're going to make something of yourself or you're going to go to work. What was your Brown experience growing up?
I think it's hard not to talk about the intersectionality of identities and the way that those play out in mentorship, right? And as a queer man, gender dynamics were in everything that I did. I grew up with my dad being the only one that worked for a long time, and it wasn't until we moved to the United States that my mom and my dad were having to have a more egalitarian household because they were now both working. But because of that, I think of mentorship and the way that I was shaped to be the person that I am today, and how influential women of color were in shaping who I am and shaping the way that I think and shaping the way that the things that I value and the things that I fight for, right? And from the moment that, like, middle school through high school through college, most of my growth actually came because of the women that nurtured me, because and they were women of color. Every single one of them were women of color. And I think oftentimes it's at their own expense, right? Like that they're taking folks under their wing,
Mm.
trying to share the wealth, trying to lift up a community through mentorship and guidance and patience, a lot of patience, because it was a lot of undoing in my head, in my actions, in the way that I think can easily fall into perpetuating inequities as a man and embodying male privilege. And um, I hear my mother's voice in my head. I now hear my aunties in my head, my sisters, my friends, and honestly, like I can't take credit for who I am and what I do without giving credit where credit is due. And it's to the women of color that have taken a moment to make sure that I don't become a fucked up person that perpetuates all the realities that we've been fighting over the last decades to undo.
And I think that's important. And I appreciate you for bringing that perspective in. Um, I think a lot of times too, we don't take that in consideration that it is different. It's different from even how whatever you choose to come forth as your truth and how to live. But it's also your environment that plays a very large role how you come forth. Um, and you heard from both males here now that are of color, right? Like the exceptional need to show up as themselves and also what they had around them that guided their perception.
Hey,
Um,
RC.
yeah,
I like to big with Joel. I like to big up with Joel, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to big up what he said about women of color. And I'm specifically speaking of women like my mother, women like yourself, and many other women, especially within this community of Stockton. Yes, y'all have held the glue for a long time. And when I talk about the missing men, the missing generation of men, not missing men, there's a missing generation because we ain't all poof off the face of this earth, right? When I talk about that missing generation of men, from that generation, we got a group, a generation of women who said, you know what? This is the cards we were dealt. And no, we might not be completely equipped to raise men and raise boys, but what we can do is give our best selves, as honest and humble as we can be, and proud as we can be, and what people we can connect them to, we will, and what lessons we can give them, we gonna give them. And I say it in that way because my mama, love her dearly. One thing she made for damn sure, I had a mentor in my life. Shout out to my big brother from Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Virgil.
That's what's up. And that was my segue that I was going into. Thank you, Aaron, for that and sharing that. That oftentimes a woman with our divine feminine energy will come through and we will try to balance. But it's nothing about having that divine masculine and divine feminine energy in the household to support. We're all built with the same energy, but whether we choose to live our life in a more feminine energy or a more masculine energy, we still need a mentorship. Now, where I was going with how we've showed up for the community, when we're going back to the self, now that we're seeing that we are now the young elders. I just had this discussion. Shout out to Matt Amen with Huddle Co-work Space. Love, my brother. We were talking about now that the older millennials, and then some of the younger millennials that are coming up into their 40s, we're now getting into the age where we need to start understanding what is our higher calling for the next generation. What is the next generation? What is our mantle that we need to take up? If you're a higher conscious spiritual person, you're thinking about these things. You're thinking about how I could bring back to my village. You're not a self-centered person because you understand I'm starting to have children, and the individuals around me that I went to school with, that I go to work with, they're also having children. So how are we all showing up and giving back to the community that we want to see? And it's important. So I kind of want you all to tell me, how do you use, or what do you look for in a master? And when I say a master, it's not somebody that governs over you. It's somebody who you've chosen to help guide you as you're moving along your path, as a mentor. So let's talk about that. Do you have any examples for anybody?
Yeah, I got a couple. Um, I'm gonna give this specific detail though. A lot of times, as we grow as spiritual beings, there's a spirit called the Holy Spirit. If you're Christian, um, I will not quote the name of the spirit for any other religion, but I know you know what I'm talking about. And that spirit gives you this thing called discernment, where you learn how to shut up when you need to shut up, speak when you need to speak, etc. The mentors I choose act as a conduit for that spirit for me in some type of way. So, example, I might be ready to go off on somebody, and the Holy Spirit been telling me the whole time, hold it together, be cool, bite your tongue. This ain't the battle. But that that into that one little inkling on your shoulder that get to talking, that little monkey to get to talking. My mentors, they shut the monkey up. Straight up. That's what I look for. I need my mentors got to shut the monkey up. So that way the Holy Spirit can continue to act.
And you have to, in order to, and this is your words, because I rarely use the word monkey to refer to myself due to the racial connotations. And I see one of my major mentors. I want to make sure to let Mr. William Lattimore, we're going to have him come
Oh,
on.
he one of mine too. Let's go.
Listen, we got a master. I sent the link out to all the masters tonight. But we're gonna have him come on in just a moment. I want to give him a great introduction before we have him come on. But what I was saying was, I think there has to be trust as well. So when you're developing your master and that master is developing you, you're also developing a trust, a bond, so you can be guided, right? So if you're a real higher conscious person and you're looking to complete yourself, you're looking to find knowledge and guide yourself, prune yourself, whether it be yearly, daily, or weekly, right? You're looking within yourself, but you're also looking for somebody who's just is striving just as you. And as I'm saying this, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Mr. William Lattimore. Mr. William Lattimore, go ahead. What's up with you? What's the word?
Hey, everyone. How you guys doing? Grand rising to you.
Yes, Grand
Um,
Rising
Bless,
to you.
bless.
And you are a
it's
master of your own. You have been a mentor here in the greater Stockton community in San Joaquin for how many years now?
only two. Only
Oh,
two.
okay. Where'd you do,
um,
where'd you do your
I
work before, sir?
I would have to go back to starting in '82,
Mm,
um, when I started working with youth or young kids at the Boys and Girls Club.
mhm,
So it's been that long.
mm. So we
It's
gonna. I was born in '85. I'll be 40 next year. So we're gonna
you,
say about 43 years you've been working
I,
with.
no, only two. Only
On
two.
the two.
Look, Rebel, you better stop telling my age. We celebrate time and space here, right? It's irrelevant to where our bodies will be changed in higher consciousness. But I say this because we have some of our best mentors here and around um in and around us that can share gems, that can share what's needed to support and connect with our youth, to support and connect to our higher self. Um, if you were to share anything tonight, Mr. Lattimore, what would be some fundamental things that you live by that helps and could help someone who may be struggling with the self right now?
um, Young men today need to learn how to stand their grounds. They don't know how to stand up. Um, a lot of us, cut our teeth through the street, and the street tell us what manhood is all about, and we learn it in a difficult way about what it means to be a man.
Mm,
But the young people today, Aaron was talking about a missing piece. The young people today, there's a missing piece in there somewhere because they no longer knows how to stand their grounds. Meaning, do you have rules, regulations, limitations, and boundary lines? Do you know how to hold still in the midst of a storm and that kind of stuff? And most of our young people can't do that. So we had labeled them as professional teenagers. So
mm,
they're 35 years old, but they're professional teenagers.
mm,
Uh, we as adults have stretched adolescence so long that um, we call a 26-year-old a youth today. That's a grown man who don't know how to be a man.
mm,
So it's a lot of things that's out there, but to stand on your own 2 feet, I would say make sure you know you have your self-esteem, you know who you are, you know where you're coming from, you know where you're trying to go. But in order to have self-esteem, you have to find out what that's about, and then go into learning to be a leader,
mhm, mhm,
model the way. This is for a leader. Model the way, engage others to act, challenge the process, um, encourage the heart, and inspire a vision. As us as men, that's what we should be doing. Uh, and as an older man, that's what we really should be doing. Those main things to build up great leaders just by working on their characteristics right there.
So when you say
I
as a
don't know if
man, I think there's a certain rites of passage that I think any person, whether it be man, woman, or a non-binary person that goes through, just a human in itself, goes through when it comes to growth. And what could we say is a consensus to growth? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Emotional intelligence is one of them, right? I remember one of the scriptures I read as a young child, and again, these are things that I take with me. You know, when I was a child, I did the things of a child, and so it's like as I'm older now and as I begin to grow, I start to see a more adverse reality, right? We're not made aware. We may not have the consciousness that our youth may have now. I know I didn't have the same consciousness. I was not conscious. I was very green behind the ears and rosy colored glasses, and I did not see evil. As I got older, I understood what a spirit or what a frequency or an energy could look like that presents itself like that. So a lot of times I think a lot of times our young people are misguided, and a lot of times they view authority as the same thing as power, or and to take it in any means necessary. So with what's being done and what's being said and how we see things now, do you think it's some cognitive dissonance that's happening?
Uh, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's going on out here um, with single parents, single fathers. The things that Aaron is going talking about, uh, how we connect to each other, how we work with each other, how we even just simply just talk to each other. That's been um, a way to. I was talking to two young men, and just by the way they were standing, I sensed their disrespect, and I had explained it to their mother, about how just simply how they are standing, how they disrespect themselves and each other, and their parents. Um, and they had no clue of talking to an elder, somebody 60 something years old and plus. When you start talking to them, we talk in different tones and talk in different ways. We're disconnecting from each other, and there's a thing called a forest story that explains how we need to go back to this connection. uh,
Mm,
it's a shame when the elder can't talk to a youth.
mm.
The grandma used to tell me, when a elder dies, so goes the library.
Wow,
And
that was deep.
when
Stay right there for a moment. When an elder dies, so goes the library. So if you don't get the teachings of the elder, how can it pass down? And a lot of our times, in our lifetimes, you know, language, information, identity of what the family unit is, and our family traditions are passed down from the elders. Um, and I find a differentiation happening when I see elders not trying to be elders. We got fancy names for grandma now. You know, call me Mimi or Mama or Mimo. Um, I think the first, and I'm not discriminating again. Trust me, this is just me being my silly self. I would never age anybody. I don't believe in ages, sexism, or anything. But I remember being in the club in my 20s, and I saw somebody's grandmama in the club, and I
oh
didn't,
yeah, oh
I
yeah.
wrap my hand around that. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, when do we enter into elderhood? When do we know we're there? When should we start acting in the ways of an elder? For a very long time, I didn't want to grow up. I think having kids really settled me, but I don't know how many times I jumped on a motorcycle and was doing 180 down the highway. I didn't think about my future like that. I know I got good grades. I was a 4.0 student. I was always top of my class. I was always giving back to the community, but I was a wild card. And I didn't think about my legacy. So when do you think, you teach rites of passage? When do you think we should start moving into our elderhood?
You ever heard of a thing called it's youth development stages?
Mhm.
Coming from what is it called?
So they have
Adolescent stages,
different
right?
theories. One of
No, no,
them
no.
that we follow, Piaget's
Say it again.
Piaget's theory, human development.
Yeah, childhood development stages.
Hmm.
If you ever think about childhood development stages, if there's a child development stages, there must be an adulthood development stages, and we never talk about that.
We don't talk about that. We just like you
No.
18, you an adult. But that was even put in place by mankind who put laws into place or from social norms. I know a lot of 18-year-olds that are not quite developed, and I truly don't believe, and I don't tell nobody else what to believe, but I truly don't believe in putting your children out at 18. They're not ready, especially in this
Right.
economy, in this dispensation of mankind. They're not ready. Humans have not evolved that much where they can be able to support themselves at 18. You know, we still need
But
our family unit at that age, right?
what the economy has changed so much that they can't afford it now. Way
I
back in grandma's days,
know
they
grown
could
men
afford it.
what they with their parents. I know grown women are moving back in with their family
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
it's hard right now.
It changes. But going back to your original your original question, that adulthood development stages is a part of rite of passage. We only focus on the second rite of passage in life. So the first rite of passage is the passage of birth, and that's why we need to change the way we think about our birthing process. But that's the first rite of passage. The second rite of passage is what everybody thinks about and talks about, and that's childhood moving into adulthood. That's the only two we really think about. Then we go to um, the next stage would be marriage. After marriage, the next stage would be eldership, and then the last stage is death. We don't talk about the growth period that takes place with that. Um, the first thing you become as a man, you become a warrior to understand what is going on around you in your community. Do I know my parent? Do I know my family? Do I know my community? Can I take care of myself? Meaning, can I cook? Can I clean? Can I sew? Can I take care not only myself, but can I take care of another young female? And then can I take care of a family? And it starts to tell you where you are in your stages of life. The next stage is you become a high witness, but the high witness knows information but can't explain it to you. I know where I'm trying to get to, but I can't really explain how to get there. And then the stages after that is a high witness. Then you start turning into a teacher, a leader. And that's what we need to start after the leader stage is become your eldership stages. Because the last three stages in life, they talk about spirituality more than anything else.
Mm.
Young people don't talk about spirituality. Elders do.
Elders do, and
Young people says
mm-hmm.
young people says, I got to get that car, I got to get the house. I'm trying to start a family. I need a job. That they working on all that. Elders has already done all that. So these different stages in eldership, just listen to what they say, and they'll tell you if they're elder or not.
I'm noticing
We,
too with the different stages and how we change, it often will mimic the seasons, right?
yes,
Um, I have true to believe that nature in itself is in a reflection of also the life source that we've been given. And I've noticed even going back to the analogy of the tree, and I touched on this a little bit on the first episode this season, how I came about with the prune tree and how I envision the myself. and the self, right? When we talk about the self and how we often have to shed old bark leaves, how branches break off, how we have to be rooted in our belief systems in order to grow and support the self. But there's many changes that happens with the pruning of a tree, and often coincides also like how we show up as humans, right? Um, are you pruning yourself? Are you checking yourself? Are you checking that you are operating at the most optimal stage where you're at in your life? Um, and I always had this in the back of my mind, but I never felt responsible to operate in that this stage now where I call myself a young elder, right? Um, and I see you as one of my elders, an elder of the community who has an understanding that I am now seeking. I'm seeking on how to govern myself, show up with my most healed self, show up with the best emotional intelligence, even when I'm dealing with conflict. So let's segue to that. So there are different things we can attribute to emotional intelligence, conflict, how we deal with individuals that may not show up as their best self, right? But if we're putting ourselves, whether we fasting, whether we praying, whether we making sure that we're putting good things into our body, whether we're exercising, whether we're, checking for the spiritual, on the outside, we checking the energy that we're putting our physical bodies in, what we're reading, what we're putting into this body that holds this life source. How would you say to an elder would show up most in his most healed self when it comes to dealing with conflict?
When it comes to me personally dealing with conflicts, or when it comes to elders in the general sense?
Well, when you're talking about in the stages of the eldership, right?
Hmm. Okay. Uh, you got me stumped for a minute here. Because when I walk through any parts of the community, I try to hold myself up um, in a place that I want to see reflected back to me. I uh, it's a shame that we can walk down the street and can't say hi to one another. We just walk past each other. We don't get a chance to enjoy the day because we're so angry. We're rushing through the whole day. There's a commandment in the Kemetic principles that says, "Thou shalt not be impatient. Thou shalt not rush through the day." That kind of stuff. Thou shalt. When we go through these things, we just live in day to day, and we forget that, like you said earlier, we have to take care of self. Once you start taking care of self, everything else around you will start taking care of itself. But we have to take care of self first.
Woo, stay right there. Now we have a new definition of minding your own damn business. Minding your own damn business is important. And
Call your mama and tell on you.
we're just talking about that. How you can mind your own business and you can just excel at that. You don't have to be in nobody else's business. Excel at your own business. And that's excelling at yourself. And a lot of times when I find people in my business or meddling, or I find myself with someone who's trying to come for me in conflict, a lot of times is a deep breath that goes along with that now. It didn't used to be like that, you know,
No,
just a lot
no.
more. Like I said, I used to hop on motorcycles and do 180 down the freeway, for fun. So I was a wild card, and I had to learn how to adjust with even my emotional attitude and my energy. I know I'm a powerful empath, and I know I could change the atmosphere of a room. With that responsibility of knowing that, you also have a greater responsibility on how you govern yourself. So when people come for you and you know you want to make it to that eldership, you got to be wise. You got to be wise on even how you address certain folk and how you set the principle about how individuals should address you. And unfortunately, everybody doesn't abide by the same rules. Some people feel like they could fly off the
Yeah.
handle and they can hurt people, but for every reaction has a consequence. And I think it was Medea that said, "Peace be still. I got something in this purse." But all of us can't. All of us can't always move like that. So when it comes to that direct coordination of how we should really see ourselves, what are some of the attributes you think we should reach out to or find in our masters that can help us? Because some of us wasn't raised that way. I know I was reared in a way where prayer was in the home, supplication, fasting. You check yourself, and my parents didn't allow me, with all of my big personality, to get out of line. They knew what that would look like if, my mama was a real one, right? We call her Sister Ruth. And oftentimes I will refer to Sister Ruth because she was so impactful on even how she showed up for the entire community. People know not to run to Sister Ruth with, gossip and things that was just not of a higher frequency. She wasn't gonna go for it. And she's still seen as an elder in a community that will set you straight. So how do we find these attributes in a person? That's what I'm trying to get our viewers to hear.
Mm, that's a rough question now because we got grandma acting like she's a teenager or a young lady.
Well,
Um, Somewhere along the line, we have missed the boat, and we're not going back dealing with self. We shove our traumas or whatever, however you want to put it, underneath the rug and pretend that things are not there, and so we miss some of the teachings that we could have gotten if we do what Uncle George said.
mm,
You have two ears and one mouth.
mm,
Uh, you need to listen more than you speak. And if we trying to make that move, as we talked about earlier, to become that elder, then the older you get, the more silent you become, because now you're trying to hear what the spirits are saying to you. Now you're trying to hear what your ancestors and how they're talking to you, and you're trying to bring that forth to the next generation behind you. But there's a piece missing. So we don't deal with self, we hide from self. Self is everybody come out of the house with that mask on
mm,
and pretend with each other all day long.
mm,
And we say we're healing everybody else, but we never healed ourselves, period. And
mm.
so we never talked about how do I love myself? How do I take care of myself? How do I take the time to meditate? You have incense all around you over there. How do we take and burn and relax and deal with nature and see what's around us? Because once we start taking care of self again, then those things around us would take care of itself.
Masha.
Then we can begin to have a real dialogue, because now you calm down enough to the point where you would listen to me and I would listen to you.
Woo, stay right there. A lot of times too, I see that we don't handle conflict well as women of color. And that's our Latino women as well. That's my Asian women and any women I would say right now in this dispensation, unless you have learned to listen. Listen to your spouse, listen to your mate. And I'm talking from my perspective. And I've also heard from my clients, I've also heard from shared confidants that it is getting harder to have a more in depth, concrete, informational connection with your partner. It seems to be that there is a lot of, misdirection, misinformation, gossip, cancel society, that whole movement and energy that's in the atmosphere. But when you're moving out of true love, you get to come back to the table. You're not going to bed mad, right? You're checking yourself. You're redirecting even how you're showing up and saying, okay, babe, okay, honey, okay, my wife, okay, my partner, my husband, I was wrong. And how can I move out of love? Um, I've not seen a lot of elders even talking on that, right? We go to these like relationship gurus, and unfortunately, a couple of them have been put on the spot, um, and I hate to say it with all the slander that's happening, even with some of our leaders, it's kind of hard on like how to navigate who to listen to. I mean, if you're even looking at the podcast world, it's so much information out there. You got to almost figure out what's in alignment with you. What are you
Right.
feeding your spirit, right? I think it's important. I think it's important to really understand I can't listen to everything, right? When you're self-determined to be the best, to heal, to show up as your healed self, you're going to protect your energy. And all of us haven't been taught that.
What's the question you asking me, though?
I think I just made a statement off of
I
what
think
you
so.
said. It really triggered a point where we have to sometimes be quiet in order to hear, in order to understand how to show up. When you talked about connecting back in nature, connecting back to the wilderness, connecting back to things that will set our intentions in alignment with where we need to be. I
So
think we have to
if
be intentional on that.
so if you don't go back to self, fir- have you ever heard of the phrase dead relatives
No,
or ancestors?
no. I heard of ancestors, yes.
Okay. The dead relatives is the one that you yourself, the energy that you have right now amongst you. You don't talk and deal with your ancestors because you're never feeding your ancestors, and the ancestors are there to be with you to help you on this journey that you're going on. So they are considered to be dead relatives because they you're not reciprocating, you're not going back and forth and helping each other. But once you learn that process of dealing with of how to open your ancestors' mouth and how to reach back and feed them, now you can get that energy and give it to them, and then it comes back to you.
And you're talking about, spiritual intercession when it comes to your bloodline and
Yes.
how to remove what, I've heard many call curses over the ancestral line. And sometimes we don't know why we react the way we do. And I want to give some psychoeducation. What I tell my trauma clients as well is trauma and things that have happened in the ancestral bloodline are real. And they will often
Hmm.
show in your family's uh,
Hmm.
ability to, transcend the trauma. You will see it. Sometimes it will manifest in your child, it manifests in an uncle, or you wonder
Hmm.
why addiction runs so rapid, or sex addiction, and you start tapping into different energies because your ancestral bloodline was never healed. They never talked about it.
Correct.
It was brushed underneath
Correct.
the carpet, right? And you weren't given also tools to even deal what was going on within you. So sometimes it's hard to talk about these things because if you're not a spiritual person and you're not in tune with spirit or with just energy and frequency and just understanding and feeding your ancestors and going back, praying for your ancestors and healing them, you're probably not going to understand what we're talking about. And again, Mr. Lattimore, I appreciate you for coming on, because what you dropping is gems. I think it's a little bit more of an advanced master class on how you speak it. And so we're gonna have to have you come back on just to talk about that part in itself, right? When we talk about the pruning of the tree, we also pulling off things and looking within the self. It's not serving us. Our ancestral trauma is not serving us. It's just a reminder and it's a guide uh, for us, right? To get back to the ancestors, to to heal our ancestral pains, the things that happen down in the bloodline, the things that are not talked about anymore.
So this is why we really, really need to understand our personal history. And then again, going back to dealing with self, I need to know my personal history. I need to know my family's history. I need to know my people's history and my communal history, so I can come bring this information forth and heal and push to the future. So when you reach back and talk about your bloodline and your ancestors, when you talk about them, they can help you with this process, but you have to wake them up and learn how to uh, get guided and start listening back to nature again. Because you're right, when those ills that happened 2 or 3, 4 generations back start revealing themselves, no one has dealt with them. They're all dead persons who's come. They just simply dead persons. So now you turn them into ancestors. They will reveal to you what took place and how to move forward,
Now,
what you need to do
about,
to heal yourself and your family, to
now
break that thing.
what do you say about my viewers now? I got a plethora of viewers, and I got a plethora of individuals um, that love RebelRae, that love how my mind works, but sometimes they're are not in agreement, but they'll listen in. What are you what are you telling those individuals that are listening in right now who have been taught that we should not talk to our dead, or our ancestors, that we should leave the dead as dead? I know that one of the scripture texts talks about that, and some people don't believe in the metaphysical and in the spirituality part, right? How would you talk to a non-believer?
Don't you have an aunt who just passed? Don't you have a brother who just passed? Isn't that blood connected to your blood? Um, then couldn't you feel them when they were here? And couldn't you, now they're gone, couldn't you find yourself still thinking about them and still feeling them? That means they're in your blood, you are in their blood, and you can reach back generations and generations and generations once you learn how to do so. We
Mm,
have been told we have been told that that whole notion of having an altar at home, of talking to your ancestors, things of that nature, we have been told that's taboo. And that's that Asian stuff. When reality set, when you understand what the whole process is, the Asians got it from us,
and
through
when you say
Kemet,
that, who
not
you
Egypt, but through Kemet. They got it from us. And so now they're doing what we taught them how to do, and yet we won't do it because it's taboo on our end.
so Kemet, for
Uh,
those viewers that don't know the name Kemet or not familiar with Kemet, Kemet means Egypt. Egypt, meaning the ancient um, individuals that came. Some believe that came north of the Nile, and others believe that the first humans, or the first awakened humans to consciousness and understanding of spirituality and metaphysical, came from the Great Lakes. And shout out to my friend Professor Clarence George, originally from Stockton, born and raised the South Side. He's a professor at Sacramento University. We'll be coming on to the podcast and talk more about the origins of Africana history. And I just been told also by my master, Mr. Lattimore, that we don't call ourselves Africans. that was a Eurocentric word that was given to us as well. But we can go deeper into that. But as we talk about, even when we talk about the blood of Christ and how people talk about that the blood of Christ has power, but yet we don't have power in our bloodline, it just kind of does not set well, right, with the truth that we're trying to seek out. How do we continue to heal? How do we continue to show up at our best self? Because I believe in getting to the higher consciousness. In this lifetime, excuse me. So in that notion, I think, Mr. Lattimore, it's imperative that the elders, and we're going back to our mentorship, it's imperative that the elders teach their individuals. We know that history in the Americas, North America is not just half of the continent there, right? In the Americas and some of the European territories, we are still practicing the belief of speaking to our ancestors, healing the bloodline. And the truth is out there. Um, we were often erased. And when I say erased, we're erased from history, our identity, our practices, our rituals that support some of the truths that are being told today on the podcast. And if you don't know, you know, now you know, and you can look for yourself. Now, if that's not your belief, that's not your belief. But it's something to look into, definitely. Can you drop some books on, I always like to drop some books or some literature to the podcast viewers and listeners on maybe some of the information we're dropping tonight.
Some written books.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you some people you definitely need to listen to.
Okay, go
Dr.
ahead.
Ben Dr. Benyaki,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Dr. John Henry Clark, not Henry, but Henrik Clark,
Okay.
um, Ray Hagan. Who else? It's a bunch more, because these gentlemen has been studying longer than I've been alive, and I'm still a babe. If anything else, I'm a teenager in this. So I know a lot of us don't understand that spirituality is connected to nature, and we if I'm about to get beat up right now.
Okay, well, give me that. It's your truth.
The Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and all these other ones, whether you Baptist or what have, has taken us so far away from nature that we don't know who we are anymore. We have to get back into what our ancestors has taught us. They left the information all around the world, but it's been blocked off, and we don't see it. That's not our stuff. Everything on earth came from us. Um, Mathematics, science, and so forth and so forth. All this stuff come from us. So if we don't understand that, getting back into your spirituality, getting back into your bloodline, and that's through your father, not your mother, but your bloodline, to understand your history so you can get back to the way you're supposed to be doing, taking care of self, taking care of your family and your people, your community, and then ultimately taking care of the world. That's part of your job you're supposed to be doing, but you have to include your ancestors. It's a must. You have to learn how to pray to them. You have to learn how to ask them to be an intercessor for you and the nectar, or the divinity, because we can't just turn around and shake somebody's hand, just eat, just we've been spitting, and then we farted a little bit and we cursed at somebody, we had some drinks or what have you, and then we turn around and say, let's pray. Amen. We can't do that and expect this pure energy to respect us. It won't. They can't. They don't do it. We are filthy until we learn how to cleanse ourselves and get prepared for this prayer that we're getting ready to do. or to feed our ancestors, now we can ask our ancestors to, to help us here right now. And as we're feeding them, they're feeding us. But it starts with our personal history, family history. But what do we really value now as a family? We value European standards. We went away from African standard. We went away from native standards. We went away from our um, um, Kemetic standards, and we adopted European standards. Uncle George said this: the Africans seen the Europeans come, and the Europeans come, and the Europeans gave the Africans a Bible and told us to get on our knees and pray. And when we stood up, the European had the land and we had the Bible. So we are so far disconnected from what we used to do and how we live with one another that we don't even realize that the people on this island we call Turtle Island, North America, it is South America, all the Americas. This is our land too. We're the Native Americans they're talking about. We're the Indians that they're talking about, but we also the Africans that everybody talk about. We also the Japanese and so forth and so forth. This is our universe, our world, but it got taken away from us. Our things that we know that we taught everybody else, they're using it, and we're no longer, because now it's taboo to us, and we need to get back to who we are. We need to understand what our elders
Happened when
are hearing from our ancestors, that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
And again, we do see the reciprocation of how oppression has oppressed the history of indigenous people, people of the native land, and how it often started with killing those that knew the history, removing artifacts, removing sacred, removing language that was given. And so if you don't know, look at any factual book that based off of how you divide and conquer a land, and it will show you that history repeats itself. And oftentimes, those that don't know the power of their identity and how they're supposed to show up as their healed and true self, their higher self, often will be commanded by that oppression. So we must stand. I want to thank you, Mr. Lattimore. This has been one of those podcasts that I will go down in history books. It might not be one of the podcasts that is mostly viewed, but it's an important one. It's the conversations that we need to be having.
This
It's
is true.
right. It's the conversations that we have to hold accountable to the self in order to rectify, in order to bring retribution and reconciliation to things that were lost and taken. So I say to you, my brother, I appreciate everyone tuning in today. Again, catch me every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Live here on Facebook Live. I am also an owner of a beautiful mobile bar and lounge. And, I always plug my businesses. I'm very proud of my businesses. They help me feed my family. I love my family. I love my community. And one of the things, I always have something I want to share with you all. And for those that are practicing your abstinence from your sobriety from drinking, you don't have to tune into this. But I thought it was a real cool book. It's called Two Joints, Jazz, Clubs, and Juice, Cocktails from Two Centuries of African American Cookbooks. And it's by Tony Tipton Martin. He's a James Beard Award winning author of Jubilee. This book also gives the history of how cocktails in American history were actually created, and it created an actual movement of enterprise for the African American. It's a deep book, but it also is a recipe book. So a lot of times it has beautiful pictures that involved whenever you are like someone as a socialite like myself, I like to invite people over. I like to have drinks. I like to conversate, put some sexy jazz on, and we talk about uh, the importance of why we have this. And let me just read just something from this, right? Um, this is on taverns, right? It says enslaved African Equanos investments in liquor businesses from the winemaking techniques he observed during palm wine productions in Africa to the business acumen he gained as a captive on an English merchant ship trading in Grenada citrus fruits, sugar, and rum, eventually enabled him to purchase his freedom, write an autobiography, and advocate for the end of the British slave trade. Listen, it's a deep book. It's not just about how you can create the most tantalizing drinks, but it's one of those books that you can have on the coffee table. It is a conversation starter. It gives you some wonderful backstory to why we do the things we do in African American history and enterprise. And so, if you don't know, plug me for your next event. It's Ray and J Mobile Bar and Lounge. I'll come to you and make the most beautiful mixology cocktails ever. You have a pretty face to look at, and I'll work with you. And you can visit me on Instagram and Facebook. I want to thank you for joining. And again, if you have events, if you want to just join in and come on stage, or even just come live with me, you are welcome. You're welcome to be here. It is the place. And I thank you again. And I am RebelRae. I'm signing off.